wouldn't bet 80-1 on him getting in the Leicester squad, let alone the England squad. That's a side note.
Hello and welcome to episode 25 of the First4LCFC podcast with myself, Jamie Thorpe, and my fellow admins of First4LCFC, Christian and Edbert. How are you both?
That's never going to get old.
Oh dear.
Joke I'm enjoying. I'm not sure if Edbert is. But anyway, listen, before we get started, just the usual reminder, please subscribe, rate, review our podcast on whichever provider you use. It's really appreciated. And as always, feel free to get in touch with us directly with questions, comments, rumours, or simply to say hi, or just tell us that you like or dislike the podcast. Right.
And dislike you.
Jamie, though, I'm going to jump in straight away and, do a disclaimer to our listeners. Obviously, our audio is a bit hit and miss at times, and that is something that is going to get worked on with different setups and stuff. But I think this week should be significantly better than last week. But again, please tweet in and let us know how you found it this week.
Yes, apologies, that was my fault last week, but hopefully, as Chris says, this one will be much improved. Right, so I think we can get on. Let's go on with the episode. So we've got games against both Birmingham sides to look back at, but we'll start with the one that's most fresh in the memory. Now, Chris, at the halfway point in the season, I doubt many Leicester fans would have described Villa at home as a massive must-win game, but it definitely was. After a wholly abject performance last time out, Foxes were rampant, 4 goals, clean sheet, and a huge step in the right direction. But in your mind, what was so different from the performance against Norwich, and why was the result so much better?
It was a great win. Obviously 4-0. There's no complaints at all. I think the main difference is the opposition, though. I think Villa are doomed, absolutely doomed. At times they looked like they were running through treacle. I think I tweeted yesterday saying, that counter attack that we scored from, is that like the slowest ever counter attack we've ever seen? Like Harvey Barnes was walking it past the halfway line. No one was interested in getting close to him. I think I tweeted at half time that if we get an early second goal or 2 or 3, the floodgates could open and it could have easily been 6 or 7. I think, we had 3 great chances in the first half, all from set pieces. But yeah, the main difference for me is the opposition. Villa are doomed. They can't defend. They've got the worst defensive record in the Premier League, and typically, if you're going to stay up, the defence is what you need. You might not score many, but you can't concede that many, and it's just alarming to think that they got John Terry on board. I mean, providing he should be doing defensive work on the training pitch. He was famously part of that Chelsea team that only conceded 15 goals, I think, one season. I think they've conceded 56 now. So, not great for Villa. They're down for me, but I think it was a must. It was a big win for us, and it's a confidence booster above all else.
Absolutely. Now, whilst Villa were certainly poor defensively, one player in particular seemed to take advantage of what was in front of him, and that was Harvey Barnes. Ed, are we now willing to admit that he is the best player to ever play the game, or does he need to do 1 or 2 more games?
I thought you were about to say, are we going to be willing to admit we're absolute morons for leaving him on our fantasy football bench? I was about to say, yes, that was a very special decision by us.
Yeah. Please don't listen to us for fantasy football tips. We have 19 points. In fact, you have 30 points sat on your bench.
It's got to come from somewhere, but fantasy football aside, as important as it is, he really had started, not pulling his finger out as such, but he started getting goals and assists, and he's really starting to impress. I know early in the season we were sort of joking about it, and we were wondering, is he going to actually produce in his final ball, and he's a confidence player, etc. And you know what, if he is, he's certainly high on confidence right now, because it's not even just the last few games, last couple of months, he's been our most sort of potent threat out wide, and sort of long may it continue. If he continues on this trajectory, it may be that we have at least one winger capable of producing.
I think it is. Obviously, I was his biggest critic probably on this podcast, and for me, it is pleasing to see. What I'm enjoying most about his game is the fact he is for me, what I was frustrated with was that he wasn't direct enough. He was dawdling on the ball, maybe looking for a simple pass. Now he's taking his man on, going to the byline. One thing I do want to see him work on, and I'm sure he will be working on it, is his finishing. I think there was an opportunity where he basically, telegraphed his finish, opened his body up, didn't really connect with it when he should have done a lot better. But otherwise he's certainly making a lot of progress, and there's links to the England squad, as we've mentioned. But for me, if he just focuses on his domestic game, he's going to be a guaranteed starter come next season.
Do you reckon he's above a relegation standard winger now?
Well, no, come on. Let's ground ourselves here for a second. There's a debate to be had. I'm not willing to be away with the fairies about him just yet. He's a player in form, but quality-wise, still elements of his game he needs to polish up. We need to see him when he's tested, potentially against different fullbacks, potentially when he's had a bad game, see how he reacts to adversity, because if he is a confidence player, he will take knocks, and we need to see how he bounces back from that. But yeah, so far so good, and if he ends the season like this, it'll be fantastic to see.
So 6 goals and 6 assists for Harvey Barnes now. So we always ask for questions, so thank you to everyone who sent them in. One sent in from American Fox on Twitter, big clue to his location, I guess. He's basically asked, should Southgate call up Harvey Barnes for the next round of international matchups to give him a run before the Euros? His current form justifies being considered, which I completely agree with, but then goes on to state he's arguably been better than Sterling recently. So what do you guys make of that?
Well, yeah, like I say, on form, he has been better than Sterling, but is he a better player than Sterling? No. Would you pick him over Sterling? No. You got to be rational about these things. It'd be fantastic for his confidence if he gets into the squad, I think, and training with those sorts of players. But he's not Sterling. No.
I'm looking at the last squad that was named, and I wouldn't be surprised. Let's say, do you know when the next squad is named?
I think it's next. Is it next week?
Yeah.
Well, it's subject. Let's just do a massive coronavirus disclaimer if anything even gets played. But yeah, subject to that disappearing.
I wouldn't be surprised if he puts in another good performance, like that he does get called up, because at the minute, obviously, he's not a striker, but they're sort of wingers are put him in the attackers category. But Harry Kane's not going to get called up. Rashford isn't going to get called up. Tammy Abraham isn't going to get called up. So England are short on strikers and wingers. Like there's Sterling, Sancho, and Hudson-Odoi in the last squad who could play in his position, and Hudson-Odoi hasn't been playing. I don't know if he's injured as well or whether he's just out of favour. So there's certainly a debate to be had as to whether he should be in the next England squad. And I wouldn't be surprised. Not necessarily. I'd perhaps be surprised if he's thrown straight in and he's starting. Don't get me wrong. But if he's named in the squad, I wouldn't actually be that shocked. Purely out of, I know he's only sort of burst onto the scene form-wise, but purely due to lack of other options, you've got to pick the form man. And at least this gives him a shot to prove to Southgate beforehand a big tournament, to prove to him that he's actually worthwhile. Otherwise, it's much more of a punt later on. Say he didn't get called up now, and then Southgate's right, I'm going to call you up for this tournament. I'd have never even seen you in training, let alone in an international match. So I do think I wouldn't be surprised if he gets called up. No.
I mean, the options that he'll be competing with, who are showing a bit of form, you've got the likes of Mason Mount. Grealish will probably be considered, or I certainly hope he will. Sterling has not been in form recently, so it stands to reason that they give him a shot at least in the preliminary squad.
Yes, I think through the players you've mentioned there, he's not like any of those. Well, other than Sterling, I mean, we're treating him as a wide man who's a winger, if you like. So I guess his direct competition would be Sterling. So yeah, if there's space for two wingers, which there should be, then I like. What odds did you catch him at for the squad, Jamie?
I think I got 10-1.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they are now, but I'm going to guess that they've.
I'll go do some research. Carry on.
I think they've shortened up quite a lot, probably just based on form. But yeah,
the fact that he's so direct, and he was at his best yesterday, I thought, because he constantly had space to run into, and the right back quite simply could not live with him. But England are likely to play a much more possession-orientated game where they're playing packed defences. So do you think it'll work against him in that his strength is running when there is that space?
I think he's going to be an impact sub. He's not starting for England in the Euros. I just don't see that happening. I think, like Ed says, it's
3-1 now, by the way. I'd cash out.
I don't think you surely didn't catch him at 10. I swear it was about 5 or 6. But
no, I'm looking at it now, 10-1.
Was it?
Vardy's 4-1. Demarai Gray, you can get at 80s.
80s, nice, worth not wasting your
I
money.
wouldn't bet 80-1 on him getting in the Leicester squad, let alone the England squad. That's a side note.
But no, I think Harvey Barnes, it'll be an impact sub, like a great player to bring on. You say if we are playing lesser opposition, even in friendlies or the Nations League, they're likely to get tired. Bring him on. That's the perfect time to introduce him to the squad and let Southgate play possession style football.
I struggle to see that, irrespective of form. And I know people say you got to pick on form rather than like what you've done in the past, but I think for Harvey Barnes to start for England in the Euros with a fully fit Sterling, Rashford, Sancho, then something mental is going to have to happen between the end of the season. Like, he's literally going to need like 10 to 15 goals, and as great as he's been, I just can't see that happening. Like, on their day, they're world-class wingers, and Harvey Barnes has the potential to be excellent, but
the most likely reason he's getting in the squad is if Sterling gets injured, which isn't beyond the realms of possibility.
I could see him in the squad. I'm talking more about a starting.
I know, sorry. I mean,
something ridiculous would have to happen.
If Sterling gets injured, then it's just the best of the rest.
I might even change the formation. I don't know. God knows, but
I think we agree though that he's done very well in his debut Premier League season, full Premier League season.
Jamie just wants us to say he wants a soundbite.
Well, yes, Jamie, you were right all along. You're so smart.
I know that. That's not me. Don't worry. But
I've never known you to plug the same player so much. I don't know what you're trying to make me say in this clip.
Just that you were wrong and I was right all along. That will do for me. Plus, you're the guy that puts the bloody clips together, so I can't see that happening. Right. So anyway, listen. Let's have a look at the other side of the pitch. A player who's come in for a little bit of criticism this season. Not necessarily hit the heights he's used to, but put in a fantastic performance yesterday, and that was Marc Albrighton. So, Chris, what did you make of his performance as a whole? It was a rare start for Albrighton, so how do you think he did?
Well, he played very well. It's what we've come to expect of him. He's just so reliable, and he's a good squad player to have. He's experienced. He's been around for so long, but even watching it on TV, he does that little when he just sort of dummies and sends like two players, and then he just takes a step and gets a crossing. But it's just little things like that. You don't see that often. There's more sort of complex skill or just anything. But it's just he keeps things simple, but always manages to find that extra yard. Gets good delivery in. He was unlucky not to cap off a good performance with a goal last night. And I think, there's obviously that stat circulating on social media that is, well, I'll give you the honours, Jamie. Do you want to what is this stat?
Marc Albrighton now has as many Premier League assists for Leicester City as Riyad Mahrez, and he's done so in fewer minutes.
So yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When you messaged me that, I didn't know what to think, because it's just one of those stats that you just think, how's that even possible? But then I've thought about it, and I guess it highlights two things for me. One, that Mahrez ultimately was a selfish player. He's probably less so now at Man City, and he was wasteful. His stats probably weren't actually as good as Albrighton's, because he probably could have created a hell of a lot more. And secondly, to argue for Mahrez, is that he was, a lot younger, probably more inexperienced, whereas Albrighton, he'd already been a Premier League player beforehand. But nonetheless, it's a fantastic stat, and he's a fantastic servant for the club. And I do think he deserves a contract extension, in the same light as someone like Wes Morgan, ever reliable, good to have in the squad, and he was part of the Championship winning squad as well. So with that Champions League experience, hopefully, could come in handy again.
So, go on. Sorry, just quickly.
I was just going to say, do you want to have a boring explanation for the stat?
Well, what we were looking for actually on this
free
podcast,
kicks and corners. There you go.
We're looking on this podcast to make it as boring as possible. Actually,
yeah. So, but you say that, but I'm adamant. I am adamant, unless you've got this in hard facts and a trusted journalist. But Leicester were useless at free kicks and corners for so long in those years. Well, I say years like he's been around for like 15, but like up to this season, we've really not converted that many. So I just think he's a sort of a wide midfielder who just isn't scared to get a ball in the box. But our boring stat correspondent Edbert does come with the goods.
Well, I've got no direct stats regarding where his assists are from, but I'll have to dive into the archives for that one.
So
a heat map of assists, that would be nice.
He's got 27 Premier League assists for Leicester. Only two other players have got more. Any guesses at who they might be?
Maddison.
No, so I'll give you a clue. One is currently playing is in the current squad. One last one.
It's going to be someone obvious, like.
Is it?
No. Further up the pitch. Yes. Jamie Vardy has got 28 Premier League assists for Leicester, which is actually quite a surprising stat. I wouldn't have seen that coming. And the other player, I mean, you're probably just going to take the mick out of me and say, before my time, probably in yours, is Steve Guppy. He was 34 Premier League assists for Leicester City.
And he definitely was. He knew how to deliver across, didn't he? To be fair to him.
Old to Marc Albrighton, actually, wasn't he? But I suppose, Ed, the other side of Albrighton's game, which we all know, is spoken to depth, is his defensive game. But how important do you think that was yesterday with him and Pereira sort of double teaming Grealish?
Well, actually, Chris's laugh, that is childish. Just because of the phrase double team.
When did this happen? I missed that.
I've
seen Ndidi single team Grealish.
I think you know this, but I was more alluding to the fact that both of them doubled up on Grealish in defence.
I thought I don't know if this is even what you want to talk about now, but I'll talk about it nonetheless. I think we set out tactically to contain Grealish from the off, because I know I've said it in previous podcasts, but I would and we may talk about Praet playing well later, but I would still have started Tielemans above him. But I do think that the reason he got picked was because he's more defensively minded and more solid in defence than Tielemans, and therefore we had those two people in the centre who could contain Grealish a bit more. Obviously, with the work done by Ricardo and Albrighton, that helped a lot, but I think we really did a good job at containing him, and I think, as evidenced in how the game went, you contain him, and Aston Villa had nothing, did they?
He was their main man, and they kept him very quiet. But I mean, talking about Dennis Praet, then, as you've alluded to, I personally thought he was probably one of, if not the best performers for Leicester yesterday. I thought he was fantastic.
Yeah, he was. To be fair to him, it's probably maybe an element of his game that we haven't seen as much, or maybe an element of his game that we didn't actually sort of expect him to have. But I thought he was really good in his defensive duties and not sort of being scared of getting his hands dirty or his feet dirty in this instance. So yeah, it's good to see that side of his game. But yeah, just to draw reference to the point about Albrighton and Ricardo, yeah, I think they snuffed Grealish out early doors. And, again, Albrighton, his energy, even the older he gets, still not scared to get back to his own byline and then build an attack from there, let Ricardo take the ball forward. So yeah, it was a good balance, I think. I think balance is a word that was something that sprung to mind across the pitch yesterday. Probably the best balance I've seen in that side for definitely for the last 11 games. Obviously through this bad run, it was refreshing to see on both sides.
Yeah, Albrighton made more tackles than anyone on the pitch, and that includes Wilfred Ndidi. So showed just how active he was. In terms of the balance for the rest of the side, obviously they tried to get Maddison playing a little bit further up the pitch, but he was, it was billed as being the battle between Maddison and Grealish, but they were all eventually outshone by the other players. But how did you think Maddison got on, Ed?
Well, I was going to message you in the first half and say, I at that point thought he was sort of absent. Maybe just the fact we performed so well elsewhere sort of made up for the fact that, like I say, it was billed as these two players, but I didn't feel like it was those two dictating the game. It was other players who were dangerous, Vardy and Barnes and, other players who were the better on the pitch. I was very impressed with Justin and Praet, for example. But at no point did I personally think, oh yeah, Maddison, great game, great ball. He was just, I don't know, he's not been at it compared to I was early in the season for a while, and I'm hoping he gets back to it because when he's, playing well, it really helps us tick over.
I mean, it's been a while since I've disagreed with Ed, but
here we go.
I think I'll be in the majority to say that that's an absurd comment. Maybe not as much of the possession was going through him purely because it was maybe a bit more out wide. But I think in terms of when he did get the ball to feet, he was very resourceful with it. And maybe it's not a fair comment, but from set pieces, he was fantastic.
Oh yeah, they were. The corners were excellent in the first half anyway.
Yeah, he was. I think I was saying to Jamie off air, but he just reminds me of David Beckham from corners. Let's not get over ahead of ourselves. But the technique he uses, the whip, normally in these days you see corners sort of floated in and they're just sort of cleared out. But I think the only other player who does it at the moment, and I know a player who Jamie raves about so much that he's the first signing on his Football Manager.
Harvey Barnes.
That's second. It's James Ward-Prowse. They both really whip these balls in. They cause so much trouble for defenders. And it's a... Sorry, what was that noise?
I was trying to say whip like on Family Guy, but I couldn't do it.
I thought you were choking on something.
No, I'm definitely not choking. Can I just say that I only watched the first 50 minutes or so religiously as I was working at the time. So if he pulled it out of the bag in the second half, just a disclaimer, I withdraw my comment completely. I was just mainly on the first half performance where I thought we were the better team completely, but I just didn't think he was ticking the game over and in control as much relative to what he was like early in the season when he was outstanding.
Maybe it's a good thing though, because maybe we were over reliant on one sort of vocal point in the team, whereas yesterday it was a lot more of a balanced thing. But I'm not getting carried away with myself, and I'll allude to this in my preview of Watford. But there's no way that Aston Villa were anywhere near the standard that is acceptable in the Premier League. They were making it so easy for us. And I know the players and Brendan will know that they're not going to get carried away with themselves, but maybe it's one of those that Maddison, it really comes to the fore when he's up against it. But it was all, we didn't have to get out of third gear last night.
And also, if certain players had their finishing boots on, Maddison could have had 3 assists inside the first 20 minutes.
Yeah, again, it's a story of his season this year. And something that does worry me, obviously, our wastefulness. A couple of reasons. I think, just to reference Vardy's second goal, that is prime Vardy. He snatches at it in the nicest possible way, and he finishes. His penalty was a bit rusty down the middle, but they all count. But yeah, that second finish, instinct, that's the goal Vardy needed. If it was just the penalty last night, I'd still be a bit, is he really back? But no, that was fantastic. But yeah, in terms of Maddison, I think, if we don't start putting away a few more of his chances, I am genuinely worried his head will be being turned, and by one of the teams I've absolutely slated all year in Man United, because I do think the addition of Fernandes, he's such a big personality. He's single-handedly changed, won that midfield, and the mentality of that squad. And I think any player like Maddison would love to be playing alongside him, and especially if they flog Pogba, who might as well be gone already. I think Maddison would slip right into that team, and that is worrying. It's just whether they go for Grealish, because no way you can have Grealish, Fernandes, and Maddison. But hopefully they'll be Grealish.
Do you want to know a fun stat?
Yeah.
Maddison has 6 goals and 3 assists in the Premier League this year, and Harvey Barnes has 6 goals and 6 assists. So he is the more creative force stats-wise.
Well, I think in terms of, Chris has alluded to it, I think players aren't necessarily putting away the chances he's creating as well. He's, like I said, he could have had 3, maybe even 4 assists yesterday. And actually, I thought whilst he wasn't the most prolific, it wasn't his most standout game, I thought he was important. It was more often than not, it was him that was releasing players down the wings, that was looking to get the ball and drive through the middle. So I think it was far from a bad performance for him.
Oh no, I'll admit, when I was saying it wasn't like what he was like early in the season, that's what I meant. I'm not saying he was bad. I'm not saying he didn't create a lot of chances from corners, because obviously they were a massive threat. And if Soyuncu and Evans had their heading heads on, and then it could have been 2 or 3. Even one of them going in, we would have been scored more. So I don't know. Maybe what he was doing early in the season was just he sort of set the bar that high that maybe we need to get a bit more realistic, and he was sort of punching above where he was at. Like, he played well, don't get me wrong.
I think what I said earlier was in terms of a lot of the play was going down the wings, and like Jamie says as well, he was potentially releasing players. Obviously, I can't cite every single pass, whereas Jamie probably can, because he's probably looking at a heat map right now.
Sad.
But what I want to, I won't give him man of the match, but I want to highlight is James Justin. I think there was periods last night where I was generally thinking he is really going to be pushing Chilwell next season in particular, because this is his first season, can let it slide. He needs to step up, but he steps up so well. And for me, whether it be a mix of Chilwell maybe not being bang at it, and obviously certain segments of the fans will tell you that he's not at it at all. I just think Justin provided such a better balance. He was so much more like Ricardo. They're both willing. Them runs in behind, even if they're not going to get the ball, they're still diverting attention. And for me, I think that it could work in our favour. Obviously, if Chilwell stays at the club, that could improve levels down that side, because I think he was really really good last night.
How important is it to have a player that's as versatile as that as well, that can play on both sides? I think the fact that he could easily play right back or left back on that showing for his debut, he was brilliant.
Well, football manager godsend, isn't he?
I think it's just looking at it from a tactical point of view, he could cause havoc in matches. Like, say a left back is having a tough time of it, and then basically if a left back or a right back's having a tough time, but you can just switch him, can't you? Just like he's that versatile, you could just put him and cause a nightmare on the other side of the pitch. And that's
You've seen Liverpool do that this season quite often, haven't you? when they've sort of in the game, they've just randomly started switching Alexander-Arnold and Robertson for one reason or another, but sort of offers another threat in both in attack and then can help defensively, like you say, if someone's having a torrid time. But it's good. Is Fuchs injured?
No, I think he was on the bench, wasn't he?
Well, I think that's a big call then, isn't it? He obviously has faith in Justin, knowing that you've got this sort of experienced pro who has been decent whenever he's been called upon.
I think
they want to chuck Justin in ahead of him.
I was a bit harsh on. Well, I wasn't harsh actually. I was critical of Rodgers, rightfully so, last week in the podcast. But I think to give him credit, he's had enough chances this season to analyse Aston Villa firsthand. I think the inclusion of Justin was purely because he exploited a space that we should have probably exploited in the League Cup, but maybe we were too tentative in our approach. And I think, that's kudos to Rodgers. And finally, well, not finally, I'm saying that he's showing that he can make tactical changes, and he can. That's potentially deemed a bold move to leave Fuchs out. So yeah, that's how I interpret it anyway.
And it's definitely going to put the pressure on Chilwell, because one of the biggest criticisms of Ben Chilwell is the fact that he's perceived as almost being a bit negative, a bit backwards in his play. But one thing I noticed yesterday was that Justin's first touch was always forward. If it was on, he was forward every single time. If it was under pressure, if there wasn't anyone in front of him, he was going. And the pace that we have down that left side was on Villa just simply live with it. I mean, they were pretty poor, but they were being torn apart every time they went forward. I think he's got a headache ahead of the next game, but we will come to that to see who we think might well make the cut for that one. But just quickly, we've touched on Jamie Vardy. So he's now back at the top of the scoring charts with 19. First goal in 600 odd minutes as well. Chris, I know you mentioned it. How important do you think it is that he got that first goal from open play? And has Vardy now got to be the first name on the team sheet once again?
If his fitness is all there, which I presume it is, he will be starting against Watford for me, and there'll be no better way to get his century of goals wrapped up than against Nigel Pearson. I think he'll be a fitting team to score against. I mean, I don't wish anything bad upon Pearson at all. I just think Vardy, potentially had some of his best times on the Pearson, and in a strange possible way, I'm sure Pearson, wants Vardy to get 100, obviously, but not against his own team. But I think it is likely to happen, and I think Vardy will be raring to go and prove a point against Watford.
So do you think Vardy is actually the first name on the team sheet then?
Well,
because given recent form, I know he's been out as well. I'd argue that Ndidi is a close competitor for that title.
I'd say Kasper Schmeichel's probably the first name on the team sheet.
Well, if you're going by position on the pitch, sure, but...
Well, no, he's not. Imagine Schmeichel getting dropped for realistically no reason. That'd be mental.
You said you wanted him to get dropped, didn't you?
Well, he's played all right since. I mean...
he's obviously listened to you. Doesn't want another bashing.
I wouldn't drop him, but no, I think the way I always see team sheets in my mind is
that on paper.
You sort of do it through the core. I'd be Schmeichel, Sionchu, and Ndidi, Vardy. Core 5-a-side
sessions.
Exactly. That's the way I'd do it.
Just on that point, do you think Ndidi really displayed just how important he is to the side with his performance yesterday?
I think he was a bit. This is where I have a few criticisms to aim at some of the players. Obviously, I can't name who they were, but sometimes we don't do Ndidi any favours. Like at misplaced passes, like we just think his leg span's like 4 foot, which it probably is.
They are quite long.
But I don't know. Sometimes we sort of play him into a bit of a horror, like a hospital ball situation, which isn't ideal. But it goes to show how good a player he is, because most of the time he retains possession. But yeah, I think it's that's what's the first game he started since New Year's Day, is it? Is that right? And he is a very good player. So another one that we need to keep hold of.
So you're right. His possession and his use of the ball has been much improved since Rodgers has come in. And one of the questions that we had on Facebook from Chris Joe is, he asked if we think that Ndidi is a better all-round player than one N'Golo Kante now. What do you make of that, Ed? What do you think?
Yeah, I think he is.
That's
end of story. Bye.
Would you
like me to explain? Oh, right. Sorry. I just think like the stats speak for themselves. The last few games. Well, actually, it's a tough one to say because we never lost in Kante for 5, 6, 7 games in the title-winning season, obviously. And to be fair, if we did, I wouldn't have been super surprised if we did go on a run of form like we have losing Ndidi, because our team really was. He was such a huge part, both defensively and sort of in attack, not necessarily up the pitch, but the guy who's getting the ball from defence and starting the counter attacks off at the back. He was such an essential part of that. And I don't know, maybe I'm being a bit flippant, just laughing off and saying Ndidi, but just for the way we play now, Ndidi's just a perfect player. It's a bit like the way we were playing before. Kante was the perfect player, and you need the right player for the right system. Because I guess as you've seen when he's gone to Chelsea and they're trying a different system and a different formation, and you're not seeing all of his defensive talents on show every week because he's being asked to play a different role that doesn't suit him. So I guess in this very formation, with the style of play you want to play, I think Ndidi is just about the perfect player.
Yeah, I do agree, but I think for me the reason is because Kante was basically like a hybrid centre back, because we had Huth and Wes Morgan, who weren't the most mobile in the modern game, whereas now we've got Sancho and Evans, who are significantly more athletic, in my opinion, and that gives Ndidi, who is an anchor, a lot more freedom.
Bit harsh.
I knew you were going to say that, but you've used that joke before.
Oh, use it each time.
And basically, yeah, I think it's hard to say how Kante would fit into this team, but yeah, I think Ndidi's more resourceful with the ball, and therefore doesn't have to do as much of the defensive work. I mean, when he has to put tackle in, he will, but I think Kante was basically like a sweeper for our centre backs.
Yeah, which is a fair point. I think, Ed, you're right in that players do keep putting him under pressure, but I think the way that he allows Maddison and Praet and the attacking players, he gives them that freedom, and you always know if teams break, indeed he's going to be there. And I think one of the biggest cheers of the night came when he absolutely creamed through Grealish.
You can't say that.
It was a cracking tackle. I'm just going to ignore that. But anyway, listen, it was a great performance from him. Leicester, on the whole, were excellent. Villa were just god-awful, as we mentioned. Is it fair to say that they're for the drop then? They're going down?
I think they're going to finish bottom of the Premier League. I think looking at the next 5 or 6 games, it's not looking great. Really, yeah, probably will get a shock result or two. But I think, like I say, fundamentally, if you can't defend, you're going down. And I think Norwich have played good football all season, but again, another team who can't defend. But I think purely if you look
at a
clean
sheet against us.
Yeah, exactly. If you can't, well, yeah, exactly not what I'm saying. But no, freak results happen. I think Aston Villa coming bottom in the Premier League. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a huge gap between them and Norwich anymore, seeing as we've given them a big hand.
What do you think, Jamie? Where's Aston Villa finishing?
Yeah, I could see them finishing bottom as well. I think they were really, really poor, really short of ideas. And personally, it looked to me like Grealish had sort of, in a way, thrown in the towel. Not to say given up, but he wasn't at it. He was marked out of the game. And at the end of the game, he was straight down the tunnel as well. He didn't go over to the fans, didn't do anything. I mean, he had spent the last 10 minutes with 30-odd thousand people chanting Jack Grealish, what's the score at him? But even so, he wasn't happy. So without him, he's carried that team, hasn't he? I think there's only one player who, in that squad, who I looked at, who I would have out the team as well, or at least consider signing. And that was marvellous Nakamba, the number 11 who played in centre midfield with the best name in the Premier League.
It's quite good, isn't it?
I'm just not gonna bite at that joke, but yeah, he was about the only other one. So yeah, I think.
Would you not take Tyrone Mings?
Too injury prone, isn't he?
He's a mistake waiting to happen as well in my book.
Was it a handball? Go on, we'll have the chat.
I don't think it is handball, is it really?
Probably not, no. But I think on the balance with all the ones that we haven't been given, it did feel a bit like justice. But that's not the point, is it?
It was a marvellous decision for us, yeah.
Nakamba.
We are idiots. Right, so listen, let's have a quick look at the game against Aston Villa's biggest rivals from the other side of Birmingham. Now, there's not really a huge amount to say about it, as the game was not exactly a classic, I suppose, but important to get the win and important to get through to the quarterfinals, Chris.
I literally apparently it was streamed. I think you could catch it on Red Button and whatnot. I'm glad I didn't know about it, to be honest. It being on, I'm not sure. I think I predicted.
You said a draw, I think.
Yeah, I said a draw and extra time. Not extra time, penalty. It's extra time. Yeah, it's extra time. But either way, yeah, it was a game to forget. There's not a lot to review. I'd rather we didn't, to be honest. We're through. I'm looking ahead to Chelsea. I think that's probably behind Newcastle at home. That's the team I would have wanted to have, purely because, yes, they are coming into some good form now. But just, I think, we've took them close this season. And I think, similar to Aston Villa, we've played them enough times now for Rodgers to hopefully unlock them. Will help us unlock them. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's the early kickoff on a Saturday as well, so it'll be a good way to start the weekend.
My one talking point from the Birmingham game is that the last time we'll see Demarai Gray play for Leicester.
Well, I've already made my feelings very clear on this, Chris. What do you?
Not everyone follows you, Jamie.
Gray is going to. I'm going to just but I said this earlier in the season. Gray is going to be a Leeds United player, whether they're in the Premier League or in the Championship next year. It's just a weird feeling I've got. He'll be at Leeds.
You could see him flourishing somewhere like that, though. He needs games, and he needs to get his ideas in order first. But he needs games, doesn't he?
Well, basically, I guess what I'm saying is that he's definitely probably good enough for the Champions. Well, I say definitely, probably. He's probably good enough for the Championship. Definitely. And realistically, maybe a team that comes up, be good signing for them, probably. Yeah.
Well, I think he was rather poor against Birmingham and against his old club, against a Championship team at home. You'd have thought that was his opportunity, but he certainly didn't take it at all, did he?
I think he'd benefit from being like the main man. He's literally at best a bit part backup player here. I feel like when he was with England 21s, he was seen as like, there was obviously other players who were also really influential on that team, but he was one of the main men leading the line, creating, scoring. I feel like he probably needs to be at a club where he feels that again. And if, like Chris said,
from the 23s.
Wow, I think that'd be even worse, to be honest. He won't care. But yeah, I think he just needs to feel like he's valued, and I can understand why if you're not playing and you don't. So yeah, I think it's time to move on.
Absolutely. So
the end.
So that's two fairly convincing wins for Leicester, though, as they look forward to their next game, which is, of course, against Nigel Pearson's Watford on Saturday. Another big game. Leicester obviously have opened up that gap a little bit over Man United and even more so over Wolves, but 3 points would go down very, very well. Chris, how do you see that game going, and what approach do you want Leicester to take in terms of their squad selection?
I think we're going to win the game, but like I said, I don't think maybe segments of the fans will be getting carried away thinking, we can put these to the sword as well. But I think it'll be a tricky game. I think, Pearson, Watford at times can be a very tough team to play against purely because of their defensive capability. They've got some good players in the middle of the park as well, and they've got players who can who can score as well. So in terms of maybe they're a bit unlucky to be that far down the table, but so yeah, I see us hopefully taking the game to Watford. I would like to see Justin keep his place in the team. I'm not sure. Obviously, it's all down to fitness and stuff. I would potentially keep it. Well, I would make one change, bring Vardy in for Iheanacho, but the rest, like I say, the balance was something that was so refreshing to see. So I'd keep it the same, bring Vardy in, and prediction-wise, I think 2-0, another clean sheet, and Vardy will get his century for me against Watford, definitely.
I think Watford, purely from a brief look at the stats, their home form recently has been actually very good. It's away they're just about useless. So like the last 4 games in the league at home have been really tough. So they've had Liverpool, Everton, Spurs and Wolves. So 4 sort of informish teams towards the top of the league. And they've got 7 points from those games, only losing 1. So they can put out the bag at home against a bigger team who are more informed. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that don't see them as a team right down at the bottom who we should be steamrolling, especially given our current form. With that being said, I do think we'll win. Hopefully another clean sheet so we can get back to sort of the defensive solidity that we had earlier in the season. So I'll go with a 1-0. Jamie Vardy again.
Are we all agreed that James Justin has to start at left back next
Yeah,
time?
I'd start same, like Chris, same 11 except for Kelechi. I would obviously bring Vardy in.
Yeah, I'd agree. I thought Iheanacho was a little bit unlucky. His touch let him down at big moments, and of course he missed that glorious chance with the header. But yeah, Vardy's got to come in, hasn't he? Watford are just so unpredictable, but they've won 1 in their last 7 games, but that was a 3-0 win against Liverpool. They've been spanked by Man United, beaten by Everton, beaten by Villa. So you don't really know what side you're going to get, do you? I guess. But do they need a win badly? Are they? Yeah, they're right in the mix of it, aren't they?
Yeah, the one place above the relegation zone, so a win would be quite important for them, Jamie.
Yeah, I'd say that would be.
Jamie, do you actually do research for this? I'm starting to think you're taking it as like a bit of a joke.
They're out of the relegation zone on goal difference, but nah, they'll take the defeat.
Yeah. I think they'll be happy to see Vardy get a hat trick. Actually, so
that's a chin scratcher.
Pearson will probably play for it as well. He wants to see Vardy get his 100 goal. I know what you're saying.
Almost certainly.
But no, that was me trying to fill the time whilst I was moving over to the league table tab. But yes, they definitely do need a win. They're right in a scrap. So it could be, it's a hard game to predict. But have you two put actual scores on the line yet?
1-0.
Jamie, what are you doing?
We just said this, Jamie. Were you not listening? Were you doing coursework or something?
I zone out when you're talking. I'm really sorry. What did you? So 1-0 for Ed, and Chris, you were.
What do you think I said?
Same score I said every week.
All right, go on then. I'll give you 2 on Leicester.
2-0, clean sheet.
2.
Vardy.
Although I do think it'll be 1-0 realistically, but we said we couldn't do that, didn't we? Right. So apart from absolutely murdering me, anything else that you guys want to add?
No. Do you have any questions or banters?
No,
Celtic fans were loving us today, weren't they?
Yep. Shout out to Celtic fans who all took a tweet far too literally back from August, September time. Thank you for that. Apparently, we are still living rent-free in their heads, and they're definitely over Rodgers leaving them, that's for sure. But today's been a fun day. I doubt any of them listen to this, fortunately. So
yeah. There's a Celtic fan who is actually 45 minutes deep into this podcast.
Yeah. Well, they went back to September in our tweets, so you never know.
Yeah. That's longer than most Leicester fans listen.
Probably longer, but I doubt. Is anyone listening at this point? Who knows?
All 3 of you.
All 3 of you. No, but thank you if you have made it this far. As always,
you're a very sad person. Get a life.
No, don't take it. It is obviously joking. We appreciate each and every one of you that do listen, so thank you very much. Please, questions, comments, feedback, it is all appreciated. Hopefully the sound was much better this episode. But we will be back again at the usual time next week and hopefully reviewing another win for Leicester. Thank you very much for listening.